really like the
Yeah.
back half of the movie. The early part of the movie, it all kind of seemed rush. It was tough to try to, I think, like connect with a lot of those characters because there's a lot going on and they're trying to advance it so much. And I understand it's probably tough because in order to tell the full Von Erich story, that probably needs to be a longer movie. Again, they cut out one of the actual brothers, right? So like it probably needs to be a longer movie, but at the same time, you're making a movie about a wrestling family, so you probably can't make it longer and actually have people go see it. But I, especially the back half of the movie, I loved. Yes, my first review, the part of the review I texted to you guys was, how can you not have anybody like? Everybody does a Ric Flair. He's doing Sting woos instead of the Ric Flair woo. Like I could not believe that the one character that is everybody recognizes, and you
It was
get that
better
wrong.
off if Jay Lethal was
wild.
Ric Flair. And newsflash, those two don't look the same.
Thank you very much for that, sir.
Yep, you're welcome.
Thank you very much for pointing that out. Just a quick review from me, as Gabe mentioned. So there's a lot of death in that family, and if you haven't seen the Iron Claw, we ask you to go see it because it brought me back to my childhood watching World Class. So you're just going to cut out Chris Von Erich like he was never around. He killed himself as well, young Chris Von Erich.
Mm-hmm.
MJF didn't get a chance to shine as Lance Von Erich, the fake Von Erich. God, that was so terrible. We come to find out that Fritz was a jerk off because he was someone who kept pushing the Von Erichs out there. I love the blurred lines of making wrestling real and not real. It came across as a legit sport.
Right.
That's just the way it was told. But Fritz pissed me off because I probably should have known this as a kid, but I didn't because I wasn't smart. But just the idea that he was pushing his kids out there and pushing them too much, and the mother had no say. Fritz's wife had no say in it, and Fritz was trying to do something that he never did, and that's become the NWA champion. And that was the big thing because World Class didn't have their own champion. They did not call it WCCW as they did. They did not have in-ring promos like that. But it's cool. It made it more modern. I get it, but they call it like WCCW. Like,
yeah,
they don't even really call it that. It was always World Class or World Class Championship Wrestling. The announcer that was Bill Mercer was actually better than Bill Mercer, the play-by-play guy. I was shocked. I'm like, boy, this guy's way better than Bill ever was. Bill was terrible. And by the way, where do you find a Harley Race lookalike?
Yes. Well, no, like the dude nailed. Like again, you get Ric Flair that wrong, but you somehow nail Harley Race.
Like it was like that made no sense. It was Harley. Like I didn't understand. I was like, what are they doing here?
Like, where do you find someone that looks like Harley Race? It blew my mind. I'm like, that looks just like Harley. It was great.
They spent all their budget on a CGI Harley Race. That's the only way you can actually explain it. They just CGI Harley.
Otherwise, I mean, the story was told very well. Yeah. Kevin should have been the NWA champion, but Kevin was terrible on the mic. He's terrible. He's 70 years old. He's still terrible on the mic.
Yeah.
Kevin Von Erich is horrible on the mic, and that's why he wasn't champion. David Von Erich was supposed to be the champion because he could work heel or babyface, guys. He worked babyface, obviously, in Dallas, but he would go to St. Louis or go to other territories and in Florida and be a monster heel. He was a jerk in other places, but only the territory only saw that in that particular area. So, I mean, a tragedy, but also a refresher of how strong World Class was, that they were good enough to be viable. Now, it's funny because Fritz made it seem like that he was against the WWF at the time, and not really. It wasn't really a battle like it is now. It wasn't a wrestling war. It seemed like it was, but it really wasn't. But being on ESPN, that mattered some too. So,
but I will say, like, the movie made me go search out on YouTube and watch Flair versus Kerry in Dallas. And we talk about fans and crowds being into things and making us feel. They ate up everything, like every little side headlock. And like when Kerry Von Erich eventually wins the title that night, it was such a big deal. Like, oh, I'm invested in this grainy footage right now.
I mean, Gabe, there was a time where all these Von Erichs kept killing themselves from, all of them, David, and then the David dying. He didn't kill himself. He died in his bed in Japan. And
Japan.
with Kerry, that whole thing, it's amazing how Kerry. It's amazing that Vince put the IC title on Kerry with 1 foot.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
How crazy! How I mean,
It's wild.
like he was getting it done. We all knew what happened, but he actually wrestled well. He had some great matches against Mr. Perfect, but just the idea that he couldn't keep going, and of course he's gone. And then Mike, and they didn't mention Chris, but it's just like all of this to me was just that because Fritz was never considered good enough to be the NWA champion. That's all this was about, and it drove his kids to suicide.